Well, friends, we've reached the final lesson in our first study on spiritual due diligence, that study called The Need for Due Diligence. I'm sure you know that by now. And the 8th lesson, the final lesson, is a review, and it goes back through some of the things that we gathered in the lessons prior to this one. But it begins with a very important question, and I think it's through the review you'll come to a personal place of asking and answering this question for yourself. But I want to ask and have Jeff answer it today, and that question is there a reason even to continue investigating? Obviously, if someone out there has invested 7 weeks prior to this one or 7 studies prior to this one, saying, I don't know, they're at a point now of decision. Because there are more studies to come and there's more investigating to do, but they've poured some time into this. And I think they have to decide, was this valuable to this point? Do I keep doing this? For you, what would you say?
Well, since we're essentially a golf ministry, I think it's appropriate to talk and give an analogy in golf. As I've worked through the years as a club professional myself, and I'm never a tour player, but I've had an opportunity to play in quite a few different tour events, and I've worked with a lot of different instructors. As I think back through the years, David Ledbetter looked at it once, my swing, and I worked about a week with Butch Harmon, and all these different characters. And at every point, you spend some time with the guy, and then you have to ask the question, he's asking me to make a redirection maybe with my golf swing. Some of it may be substantive. Some of it may not seem to be altering my swing that much, but at a certain point, you realize that to move from here to there, I've got to make a decision. Am I going to follow and continue to do this, or am I going to break away and kind of move back to my old patterns because it's worked? And at first, as is always the case with one of these swing transformations, if you will, there's always a time of really questioning, because what happens, oftentimes you get a little worse in the beginning before you get better. You have a time to break down before you have a time to build up. If there's one message in the Bible, it's clear. In fact, Jesus uses the analogy. He says, if you will fall on this stone and be broken, now you've got a chance to repair it, but if this stone falls on you, you'll be crushed to dust. In other words, there is always a breaking process in the beginning. You have to admit, I don't know everything there is to know about reality and God. And I believe that many of those answers might be contained in here. And so that's a breaking away from your own sense of reasoning power. That's a hard decision to make. It's not unlike the golf swing. I've had some success with my golf swing. Maybe you've won a golf tournament or two, swinging in a way that maybe not as productive or as potentially as productive. Certainly, if a guy wants to be a tour player,
sure,
that he needs to repeatability. And so everybody comes to a place and go, I'm either going to continue to work on this particular move, or I'm going to go back to what I knew. And I think that's essentially where people are. I see that there may be something there. I see the potential, but the problem is you don't see near the potential upside that may be there. And the encouraging part, there's this parable that's told in Luke chapter 14, and Jesus says, go out and just tell them this. He just ascribes it as a banquet. Go out and ask my friends to come in. Go out, and there was still room left. Go out to the streets and lanes and invite people in. And finally he goes out and he says there was still room, and he was a little upset about it. He says, go out into the highways and along the hedges and compel them to come in so that my table might be full. I think one of the things Jeff and I want to do with you is give a compelling reason for you to stay on this path. You may not yet have experienced a swing change or a life transformation yet, but from our own personal experience and from our own witness of thousands of people, literally thousands in my life that I've seen transformed, if you stay on this path, and I want to compel you to stay on this path, you will uncover things day by day by day, not just in the next month, but for the rest of your life. Though I've believed for years, I still come into deeper revelations of who God is. It is a bottomless pit, so to speak, you never get to the bottom of who God is, ever. He is so deep, and each day a scripture will be opened and a new way to view things. So is it worth the continuation? Well, again, it depends on where you want to go. If a guy wants to play the tour, he's got to make some decisions if where he's gotten hasn't worked so far. And I think that's the one, I forget who was this is given to, but it says the definition of a fool who does the same thing over and over expecting a different result. And so as my own life, I had a lot of starts and stops. But when I finally made the commitment to say, I believe this even though I don't understand it all. I believe into this Jesus even though I don't understand everything he said about reality. In fact, much of what he says I don't get. But I'm going to continue on that path. As that continuation happens, you will come into, as one of the prophets said, the dawn will come brighter and brighter and brighter. And each day you walk with Jesus, it becomes more bright, and you understand the bigger picture, and it makes sense. Many times your past life will make sense. You'll realize how God's orchestrated you up into that. But if you quit the journey now, based upon some due diligence, I think you fall well short of the fullness of what God may have for you.
Right, right. Well, friends, we know that you are perhaps at a point of decision today as you continue through reviewing this particular study and lesson where you're saying, do I go on? And some of you may say already, I'm a believer and I really do want to go on because I want to know more about my God. And others of you may say, I am not what I would say is one who believes yet, but I am interested enough to continue. And so we hope that this particular study, the first study, the need for due diligence, has been one that's been very powerful for you. Yeah. That it's allowed you the space and the time to ask questions that you've never asked before. And if that's true, then we've met our goal, I would say, right. Jeff. We would have to confess to you that we certainly have an ulterior motive, that you would go on to the point of belief. And yet, prior to that, we just want to allow you the opportunity to say, at the end of your life, I took the time to at least investigate what was there and make a learned decision about the God of the Bible.
And I'll say this last thing, Jeff. And I heard it once said that God is a gentleman. He never forces himself on anyone, even though he could. He doesn't force himself in relationship. And so sometimes it is that still small voice that you can't quite hear, can't quite make out, but you can still feel him compelling you towards him. And I would just encourage you, regardless of your past experience, regardless of maybe some hurts that you have from religion, some hurts that you have from people who call themselves believers, that you would continue the pursuit, because God in all of his goodness will continue to reveal himself to you. You make one step towards him, as they say, and he makes 1,000 steps towards you. So continue that next step with us.